There's so many positive attributes of organic: soil sequestration, nutritional superiority, and so on. And we always are trying to focus on the very positive things about organic. But you know what? There's some really negative aspects of conventional industrial agriculture, and yet if we're going to change, we need conventional farmers to change. And so we're always up against this. How can we talk about this negative aspects of organic without alienating our conventional neighbors?
One of the things that I think has been a challenge, because we've been trying to think in terms of how do you make a rapid conversion of our conventional farmers. And outside of sort of setting up some chemical dependency assistances for these farmers, and I mean they're dependent on chemicals now. Well, not Prozac. They're on nitrogen fertilizers and pesticides or whatever. What I think we have to do is think in terms of their framing isn't going to change. Their training has been, this is the way they succeed, this is the way they produce, they're feeding the world, and they're actually the heroes in their minds. They also believe to be, because I come from that arena, they believe to actually be the environmentalists. They think that they are the land stewards, and that's held at a very deep core. I think it's very hard to try and run up against that and change that framing, because it's actually to ask them to call into question their sense of definition and who they are as farmers and as contributors to the food supply system. And this is why at least we're trying to propose, let's pay farmers handsomely for carbon. When you pay them for carbon, what will happen is they'll learn fast through their own innovation, through their own ability to work with their soil and land, that they have to feed the biology, and you can't do that with chemicals. You can only do it through natural methodologies, and that will start to make a shift. And this is the one thing I think when we come back to thinking in terms of even food justice. Therefore, if the farmer was given a premium to grow things in a healthy format through the biology, what we would have eventually is all the food would be organic, and we would end up with a food justice situation. So the farmer would have gained their premium ahead of the game because they're being paid for the ecosystem services, and then all the food coming into the system would be toxin-free. So I would argue that we have to think, can we actually convince them to make the change? I don't know. My father just passed away this year at 90. He farmed until his last day, and he didn't believe a thing about organic. He believed you put the NPK on the soil was only there to hold the root, and you could never convince him differently. One day he told me, he said, well, Tim, I've gone organic. I go, yeah, sure you have. And he said, oh yeah, the price of fertilizer got too high. I'm just rotating my crops. He went right back to the old way when the price of fertilizer dropped. And I think we have to just understand their frame. How do you change the incentives? And I don't think it's education. I think it's actually financial.
One of the issues we need to focus on is growing consumer awareness and encourage farmers to respond to that market. But the point, I think, might be that as long as you're building this understanding that we have in our food system, a premium brand known as organic, and Ronnie's exactly right, that's how we need to make sure we're building it. Making the case to farmers in dollar and cents terms that there's a market out there that's growing, and if they want to be part of it, be part of it. There's an opportunity to do it. The skill set that's required, the capacities that are required for management, working the fields, caring for the animals are, to put it mildly, at least the requirement for conventional agriculture. So there's a pride there too to build on. But as long as consumers are demanding these products, and as that demand is growing and getting more refined, more sophisticated, and separating the greenwashers and the phonies and the ne'er-do-wells from the real thing, I think we have, in this country anyway, a powerful system for encouraging the growth of the sector and for more conventional farmers to come our way.
Let me just mention, as someone who's wrestled with this from a public policy point of view at the federal level, and some of the wars that Ken and I have been waging out in Washington against more conventional special interests in that, nothing is a more powerful driving force than research, evidence-based. And this is exactly what this whole panel has basically dedicated their lives to trying to do, is get the best evidence and the research out so you get the buy-in from the rest of the community. Otherwise, if this is only viewed as some type of subjective value judgment or moral judgment, that is going to be an argument without end. So I think the more we can drive this through good research practices, through what the evidence shows, and then with the right incentives, as Tim just indicated, financial and otherwise, I think you're going to be able to revamp this and build it to the capacity. That's what's been talked about here today. As we move towards, different food policy, energy policy, farm policy, nutrition, and this is exactly what this healthcare debate should be about in Washington. We're revamping the healthcare system of our country and the energy debate, and a lot of the answers being found with sustainable agriculture practices. The more we can encourage them to give us the research and the basis in order to show what works and what doesn't, I think the better off we're going to be.
Well, I think we've done a good job starting to teach consumers that every time you pull out your wallet, you're casting a vote for health, justice, and sustainability, or else, a sicker society and non-sustainability and injustice. The problem is organic consumers and green-minded consumers have not gotten political, and gotten political with a vengeance. As a matter of fact, we would be at a much higher rate than 4% of the market right now, except that public policy has been subsidizing, the industrial, chemical-intensive, system of food and farming. So if we don't get much more political and turn, the average person on the Ag Committee in the House of Representatives and the Senate and in our state legislators, Ron has to be the norm, not the person pushing from the green end of the spectrum. So we got to get a lot more political if we're going to solve this. The bottom line is USDA takes 90 to 100 billion dollars of our tax money every year. They take about 20 billion of that and directly subsidize genetic engineering, chemical intensive farming, junk food, high fructose corn syrup, McDonald's, Cargill, and so on. And that's our tax money. That's not theirs. We got to take it back. And the only way we're going to take it back is getting political, making this so-called playing field level. And I think farmers, a lot of farmers with a strong mindset, they'll do the right thing, but like Tim said, maybe for the wrong reasons, when there's enough pressure on them to do so. And that's how we're going to change conventional farmers into organic farmers.